Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Concerning the Icon of the B to the East. And you know, you have to speak in code sometimes because, you know, the owl goes, you know how the owl goes, you know, and, but be it as it may, you know, we're still going forge on until the Spirit said that's enough, you know, and the Lord shuts it down for this coming Jacob's trouble and the things that are about to happen. And there's all kind of stuff happening in the news. But I was just listening to the book of Daniel. I was listening to the first 3 chapters. And before I get to the main point, which is in the 3rd chapter, you know, I want to just make a mention, you know, concerning Daniel in the 1st chapter of Daniel. Him and the 3 men that were with him, you know, Azariah, Meshach, and Hananiah. They 4, you know, were pretty much given the king's food, and they asked if they could just have, you know, pulse, which is, you know, fruits, vegetables, things of that nature. Now this is just, you know, concerning so-called vegetarians. You know, there's some people out there, some jakes out there that don't eat meat, which, hey, that's all fine and dandy if that's what you choose to do. But just notice that during the Passover, you have to eat the lamb. You know, you can't, there's no substitute for lamb, no lamb substitute, no, you know, impossible lamb, you know. You still have to eat the lamb during the Passover. But what I wanted to say was, you know, some people will try to justify being vegetarians because, you know, Daniel and the men that were with him desired, you know, pulse, which is vegetation, over the king's meat. And the reason why, you know, because Daniel and them, they ate meat because they had to keep the Passover, you know, but the problem was, you know, that once they were in the Babylonian captivity, you know, Daniel and his men, the men that were with him, they didn't want to defile themselves with the king's meat because the king's meat was defiled. That's the reason why they didn't eat the king's meat, you know, the starches and the fats and all that, you know, drinking of the wine, because they didn't want to defile themselves with the king's meat. That's the reason why they chose to eat vegetation instead of eating meat. Okay, it wasn't that they were vegetarians. It was just that they didn't want to, you know, defile themselves with the king's meat. You know, I just wanted to say that because that came to mind. I just wanted to get that out. But now concerning the icon or the image of the B to the East, when we read the book of Revelation 13, it speaks about an image, right? And you have a lot of, I'll say Israelites out there that know that they're Israelites, talking about that the image is talking about, you know, a picture of Caesar Borgia, you know, a picture of the so-called white Christ. And that's not the case. So I want to, through the Spirit, you know, use the image of Nebuchadnezzar to kind of, you know, paint the picture, you know, and to show you how it's not talking about an actual image in the book of Revelation, like it's speaking about an actual image here in the book of Daniel. So let's just get into it. This is Daniel 3:1. Nebuchadnezzar, and remember this golden image that Nebuchadnezzar set up was right after Daniel gave him, you know, the vision and the interpretation of the vision that he had. So he pretty much replicated an image, you know, of gold and put it up, you know, of himself, pretty much. So it says, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. You know, so this was an actual image that he set up. And, you know, we have, some illustrations here. This ain't the actual image, but this is just an illustration to show you, what he set up. All right. And it was all of gold, though, in this case, in the case of this image here. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent to gather together the princes, the governors, and the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And this is what they did. They did a dedication for it. Just like when Esau, builds a ship, on their maiden voyage or whatever they call it. They break the champagne over, christening, the birth or whatever. However, they put the terminologies. Whenever there's certain buildings, when they erect them, they write on them the year it was made. They might have a grand opening or whatever the case may be. So this was a dedication to this actual image that Nebuchadnezzar erected, right? Then the princes, the governors and captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So there was an actual image in this case. Then an herald cried aloud, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down to and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king have set up. So he put up the image, dedicated the image, had a decree made, which was pretty much a law, and he said that when you hear the music playing, then you drop and you worship this image, right? And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. All right, so at the penalty of death, you are to bow down to this image. Otherwise, if you don't, you will be put you'll be put to death, sentenced to be burned in the fire, in the furnace. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and all kind of music, all the people of the nations and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Right. And that's what they were doing, because it was a decree of the king at the penalty of death that if you didn't do it, you would be put to death. Right. Now, when we keep going, it says worship of the image refused. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near, or some say Chaldeans, some say Chaldeans, came near and accused the Jews, right? The Israelites, because why? They wouldn't bow to this image, because our law states different. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Thou shalt not bow down or worship them, because the Most High is a jealous power, right? It says, they spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image, and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, and they got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The names are Azariah, Meshach, Azariah, Mishael. I said Meshach earlier. Ananiah, Mishael, and Hananiah. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So pretty much, as you read the rest of the story, they were cast into the furnace because they refused to bow down to the image of Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? Now you have individuals out there that claim that Caesar Borgia, is the image, that you're going to be worshiping, the image of the be to the east, right? And that's not the case. Because if that was the case, then why is it that here in Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar said, if you don't worship this particular image, which is the actual image, you will be put to death. And they actually put people to death for not worshiping it. And they tried to do it to the three men that were with Daniel, because they didn't worship it. Now, where in the world today, since the late 1400s all the way until now, have they put up a picture of Caesar Borgia and say, if you don't bow down to this image, you will be put to death? You will be thrown in prison. You will be thrown, to the lion's den. You will be thrown into a fiery furnace. You will be put in front of a firing squad. You will be lynched. Where is this great decree, stating that if you don't bow down to this image here, you will be put to death? Where is it? It's never happened, and it won't happen, because this is not the image that is speaking about in the book of Revelation. Now, this image here in Daniel was an actual image. Matter of fact, let's look up this word image. This was an actual image, and it gave you the dimensions of the image, and it gave you the decree of what is to be done. And if you disobey, it also gave you the penalty. So the word is tazalam, which is image, idol, idolatrous figure. Okay. Then it says 6750. That's the same. Yep. Let's go here. Tazalam. Images of tumors, mice, heathens, gods, image, likeness of resemblance. See, mere empty image semblance. So when Daniel broke down the dream to him, he said the image, the head of gold is you. You and pretty much him in the Babylonian Empire. So I'm pretty sure that when he set this image up here, he put his face on it. All right. So there was a decree. There was an image, an actual image. There was a decree, a law, and there were penalties for breaking that law. When we read here in Revelation 13, there are no should I say there are penalties, but there is no evidence in the world going all the way back to the late 1400s, 1492 until now, to where these devils said, if you don't bow down to this image of Caesar Borgia, this devil right here, you will be put to death. All right, so let's go to it. It says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast to the east, right? It did come from the east, right? So let's go to the word image. And that's why I named it icon and not image. Icon. An image, figure, likeness. An image of the things, the heavenly things, like when we read about how the Lord told Moses to make sure that he makes the temple and all that pretty much according to the image that he's seen in the heavens. Used of the moral likeness of renewed men to the Most High, right? In other words, being conformed to the image of the Most High by taking on the image of his Son and walking in what? In newness of life. The image of the Son of the Most High, into which true Christians are transformed, right? So when Jake back then, and even today, when brothers convert, sisters convert, you don't turn into the image of Yahushua himself, but spiritually we turn into the image of the Son of the Most High. Let me see. Is that 2 Corinthians 3 and 18? But we all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. So we are changed into the image of the Most High Son, Yahushua. But we don't actually start to look like him, meaning in our mannerisms, in our conduct, and the things that we do, we become like him. All right. It says, is likeness not only to the heavenly body, but also to the most holy and blessed state of mind, which Yahushua possesses, right? Because it says, when we come to this thing, that we are to seek the things that are up in the heavens. So that's another type of image, right? The image of one in whom the likeness of anyone is seen, applied to man on account of his power of command, to Yahushua on account of his divine nature and absolute moral excellence. Profile, representation. See, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for representation, resemblance. Because in order to understand the image of the beast. Matter of fact, let's go to word representation, which should take us back to the word repent. I'm sorry, represent. Right, here we go. Representation, the action of speaking or acting on behalf of someone or the state of being so represented. The description or portrayal of someone or something in a particular way or as being of a certain nature. All right. So when we go back, in order to understand really what this image is, we have to go back up to the top. And 13, it says, and I saw one of his heads as they were wounded to death. Now, when you understand who the dragon is, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, you know that it's dealing with the power structure or the governments of Esau, beginning with the Greeks, ending with the British, and then moving on into America, which is the what? The revival of the ancient Roman Empire. So keep that in mind. So it says, and his deadly wound was healed. So this beast had a wound as it was unto death. Seemed like he was going to die, which the Roman Empire fell back then 2,000 years ago. Then it says, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, because right after the 1,000-year sentence that they were given, they were loosed from that prison sentence. And the very first thing they did was what? Deceive the world into believing that they were the people of the Most High. You know, you go into the iconoclasm, which is the facing of images, then putting themselves up, you know, and all of that. That goes into all of that, you know, when the deadly wound was healed, right? It says, and all the world wondered after the beast. See, because why? Because through deception, they deceived pretty much the whole world into following them, right? So when we jump down, you know, you could read more, but when we jump down to the 11th verse, it says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, which this beast that came up out of the earth is the next beast that will come back, but it would be the renewed or the revived beast after they got that deadly wound, which seemed like they wasn't going to make it. Then eventually, after a period of time, you know, the wound healed and they came back into power. Right, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth and had 2 horns like a lamb, because the 2 horns like a lamb is a representation of their dual, you know, how you have something called controlled opposition, or, you know, their dual nature, because you have 2 opposing parties. You have the Democrats and the Republicans, and they seem like they're always fighting and at each other, but they're really both on the same team. It says, and he spake as a dragon. Why? Because you have dragon goes back to the word Draco, you know, which goes back into draconian law, which goes back to Draco, which was an Athenian lawgiver who was known for his severe punishment, even for the minutest crime. You know, the least crime you could be put to death for. You know, that's how strict this individual was, right? So this beast that came back up, even though it seemed like it was a lamb, it spake as a dragon, because these devils speak through what? Through actions. And the actions are weighed out through their legislation. That's what the scriptures speak about. Woe to him that, you know, that decrees unrighteous decrees. You see? Then it goes on to say, and he, meaning this renewed, revived beast that came up out of the earth, that was renewed, that had the 2 horns like a lamb and spake as a dragon. And he, this beast, exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. And this is where the image starts to take place. And when you do a parallel comparison between America and the ancient Roman Empire, you see that everything in America is set up just like it was, you know, in ancient Rome. Let's see if we could type in, let me see if this is a good word. Right, here you got municipal buildings. I just typed in municipal buildings in America. You have what here? The Capitol. And you have all of these different these different buildings that are set up in the what? In the style of ancient Rome. You know? They're all set up just like the buildings of ancient Rome. They got the Roman columns, you know, so on and so forth. You have something called a rotunda. Right? Now when you go here and you put in or I could have put in Roman architecture. You could see this is Roman architecture. You know, and you could see how, you know, ancient Rome or America, even the Roman Catholic Church in Italy, their buildings are set up like the ancient Roman buildings. You know, you have the columns, and this was the same thing all throughout, you know, the Roman Empire. So America is exercising all the power of the beast before it. Now let's go back. It says, and he exercised. Let's look up the word exerciseth. Because you can't exercise if you're a couch potato. Boyejo. To make, with the names of things made, to produce, construct, form, fashion, right? So they're exercising, you know, meaning they're transforming into the form of the ancient Roman Empire. Because the ancient Roman Empire is a, I guess you could say, a playbook, you know, or a mirror that America has portrayed themselves as, because this is all prophecy. It wasn't by coincidence. Why didn't America set itself up, you know, like the ancient Egyptians, even though you have some semblances? You know, why didn't they set themselves up as the ancient Sumerians or the Assyrians or Babylonians or Medo-Persians? You know, why does the architecture and everything that they do resemble ancient Rome? Because this is that image that they've conformed themselves to, because this was prophecy. What was I gonna type in? Let's see. Icon, a painting of Jesus, another holy figure, a person or thing regarded as a representative symbol as worthy of veneration. Okay, they're not putting let me see, idol, portrait, likeness, representation, which we read the word representation. Let's see, how about image? It says a representation of the external form of a person or thing in art. The general impression that a person, organization, or product presents to the public. And this is the one right here. The general impression that a person, organization, or product presents to the public. And this is pretty much what it is. It's just like if Rome had a face, right? And you took that face of ancient Rome and you made a mold out of it, and you poured metals into it or whatever. When that metal hardened and you could remove it from the mold, you would see what? The image that was carved into that mold. So that's pretty much what America is. America is a representation of the ancient Roman Empire. And it's no coincidence that if you want to learn law, you have to know the Latin. And the way that they set up America was the same way that ancient Rome was set up. That's that image. Because where did they get? They didn't rule like the other nations ruled, with kings and successors of kings. You know, their sons sitting up on the throne. They ruled just like the Roman Empire by committing their government to a man. Back then I believe it was every year they would renew it. If I'm not mistaken, today is every 4 years. It's the same thing. the Senate House. You know, you have the so-called president, which would be like the Caesar. Then you have the body of legislators, which are the senators and all those that get together and they hash things out, and figure out what's going to be done with this law. Okay, this law is good, but then there's some provisions that need to be added or taken away, so on and so forth. That's the same thing they did in Rome. That's what the scriptures say in Daniel, that this beast, when it will come up, it will be diverse or different from all the others, because it would not be ruled like a regular empire would be ruled. Because a regular empire that was ruled by kings or pharaohs or czars or however you called it, and they had successors, and their sons would be known as a prince. And eventually, once the father got old and died, then the son or the prince would become the king. But in America and in ancient Rome, it wasn't so. It was set up by bringing somebody or voting somebody into office. So this is right here, the general impression that a person, organization, or product presents to the public. And that's exactly what the image of the bee to the east is. All right, so let's go back to see, to be the authors of the cause, right? Because the ancient Romans were the authors. And America just took on, the blueprint of ancient Rome. And then when you look at it, it pretty much mirrors ancient Rome. It's just a different time period, modern times, but it's the same thing. And that's why, like, on a whole, all the buildings that you see are not in the style of the ancient Roman Empire. But when you look at their, Senate buildings, dealing with America, you have the, let's see, this might be a small. Oh, here we go. You have the ancient Roman look. You see it. You have the columns. These are Roman columns. Everything is stylized like the ancient Roman Empire. That's what the image is. All right, so let's go back where we at. Let's see the cause. So we pretty much get the idea. So he exercises to carry out, to execute, to celebrate. All right, so let's go back. It says, and he, meaning this beast, this revived beast that came up, which is America, exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. And what was the first beast before him? The one, and what it goes on to say, it says, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, which was what? The Roman Empire, whose deadly wound was healed. So when was his deadly wound healed? During the time of the Renaissance period, because Rome was foretold in scripture that it was going to fall. It was going to be wounded, as it were, to death, but that deadly wound would be healed. And when we go to the book of Revelation 20, it speaks about, once the 1,000-year sentence was up, what happened? The beast was loosed, or the devil was loosed, which the devil is a representation of the 7 heads, 10 horns, which is the empirical, for lack of a better word, structure of all of these Edomite empires, beginning with the Greeks, the Romans, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain was the 7th, and then you had America, which was the 8th. So we got the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, the Romans, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain, which was 7. And then after Britain came what? America came out of Britain. And the scriptures speak about those 7 heads. There will be one more to come out, which would be the 8th head. And that's where we're at right now in prophecy. Okay, so let's read this again. He exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Right. And that's what they're doing. That's why you have Americans, so-called Americans, going to what? To the polls to vote. because they're actually worshiping the first beast, because that's how things were done in ancient Rome, through voting. You have Jake out there, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, Israelites, that are all into this system, voting. Some of them are into the political arena, governors, mayors, senators, so on and so forth. You have this one trick, up in office. She's the vice president. She's the second so-called. I mean, we know that presidency and vice presidency is all bullshit, But in the eyes of the public, she is the second in command, pretty much, to the nation. Even though we know that the international bankers are really running things, but to the people out there that don't know, she's like the second most powerful person in America, so-called. So Jake is all up in this man's system. So that's how they worshipped the image of the beast. And they're all into this system. Whether it's trying to get the American dream, whether it's into politics, or whatever Jake is into out there. It says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And they did this. They did this in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's what cemented Esau, it cemented Esau as a force to be reckoned with militarily, and that's why the nations after that kind of fell back. Then they got their status as they had their currency to become the world reserve currency, but now they're on a downward spiral. They had their come ups, now they're coming down. It says, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Yeah, and they deceive people, because that is their middle name, deception. When we go to the book of Psalms, all right, let's go to the book of Psalms 55, and we'll go straight to the point. 21. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords, because it's all about deception. You see? Whenever you see these devils, it's all about deception. That's why you ask them questions that never give you a straight up answer. They won't give you a straight up answer. Why won't they do that? Because they are the devil. They practice something called plausible deniability. You can look that up. Even when you catch them and you ask them or corner them like the rat that they are, and ask them questions, they're under that plausible deniability, which even though they know they're guilty of sin, they're not going to admit it. You're not going to get it out of them. So let's go back to Revelation 13:14. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Why? Because remember, when we go back to the beginning of the chapter, it said that once the deadly wound was healed, which we're in that time part of the prophecy, it says the whole world wondered after the beast. Because at one time, everybody was under this devil spell until the Lord started waking us up, and pulling us away from that madness. Saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make a what? An image to the beast to the east, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And that's why from the inception of America, Babylon the Great, that's what they've established. A mirror of what the ancient Roman Empire used to be. That's why, once again, you have, the stylized governmental buildings that are stylized in the ancient Roman fashion. Now you go to the projects ain't shaped like this, because that's not a part of the image. That's just people's living quarters. This is their representation. As we read earlier, for the word representation, it says the description or portrayal of someone or something. No, that wasn't it. It It was image. Right here, the general impression that a person, organization, or product presents to the public. And that's pretty much what you see here. You know? So going back, it says, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Right, because does that the image should both speak, right? So how is the image speaking? Well, there you go. It's in effect. They're passing legislation. And what is the legislation for? The legislation is for those that don't comply, they must die eventually. You know, and you know the indefinite detention, you know, through the NDAA and different other pieces of legislation that they have out there. You know, some legislation, you know, deals with the guillotine. Some legislation deals with, you know, the death penalty, summary judgment, just different things. Because remember, the time of Jacob's trouble is coming. And the time of Jacob's trouble, you know, these devils are going to be moving fast because the devil knows that he has but a short time. And when we read Revelation 2:10, it says, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison. You know, these are those concentration camps. Why? Because obviously the time is going to come when at first it's going to be, you know, voluntary, but after a while it's going to become mandatory. And those that resist are going to be persecuted. And the greatest persecution shall be upon those that fear the Lord, which are the Israelites. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried. And when we read the 3rd chapter, it pretty much says the same thing. It speaks about the hour of temptation, which the hour of temptation comprises everything that's going to happen, you know, the famines, you know, the martial law, the concentration camps, you know, all of that. But the ultimate hour of temptation is going to be with that C ragamuffin, you know, when they introduce the charagma, you know, which is the M to the A to the R to the K. All right. And you shall have tribulation 10 days, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. Yeah, because this is going to be the last and final test or trial before the kingdom of heaven is set up and established. Because Yahushua is coming back to get his kingdom, man. He's coming back to get his people, and he's coming back to claim the throne. Let's go to Revelation 11 again. And 15. And the 7th angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord, which is the Most High, and of his anointed, Yahushua, and he shall reign forever and ever. You see? So there's going to be a transfer of wealth, a transfer of kingdoms, and there's going to be a recovering of the Lord's elect package. And that elect package are the elect of the nation of Israel. You know, men, women, children that are on the list to be delivered. So Revelation 13:15, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and is speaking through its legislation, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So why is it that there are not people being put to death for worshiping this right here? Why is there not people again put to death for not worshiping this? Where's this big decree? Or where has this big decree been at? Where if you don't, take, or if you don't bow down to this icon right here, that you will be put to death. Because we read in Daniel that the King Nebuchadnezzar set up an image, an actual image. It gave the description of it, the dimensions. They placed it in a particular place. They gave the decree when you start hearing the music, it's time to drop to your knees and worship that image. And if you didn't, you would be put to death. So where is that same decree today, to show that this is talking about that image of so-called Caesar Borgia or Jesus or Serapis Crispy, as we call him, Huh? You ain't gonna find it, because this is not the image of the B to the east. All right, and that's pretty much it. And then it goes into the charagma, which all ties together. It all ties together, because the legislation is overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming, and now you have these incidences where I'm pretty sure they're staged, where there's certain businesses that are getting robbed for their cash. So now, in order to deter them, they said they no longer accept cash. Everything is going to be done, digitally. And this all sets the stage for the MO to the T to the B. You see? Which is the C to the H to the I to the P. Because that's the ultimate plans. So this has been the icon, or the image of the B to the East. And I pray that this lesson was edifying, and that you brothers and you few sisters have been edified. Until the next time I say Shalom.